So, hi there, my name is Mark Ferguson. I'm Director of Public Relations, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Nick Fountain, Head of Marketing Communications at Fat Hippo Group, and John Jones, Commercial Director of Favouritetable. Now, Nick, I believe, is broadcasting from Cheshire, and John is coming live to us from Crete. But today we're going to have a great conversation about restaurants and marketing and branding. How are you both, guys?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Really good, thanks, Mark.
Yeah, awesome. I'm very happy here in rainy, miserable Northamptonshire, but thanks so much for coming on the conversation. What do you see as the most significant challenges ahead for restaurateurs? And John, I'm going to throw you into the mix and start with you, please.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say that restaurateurs are some of the most kind of resilient people that I've ever worked with, and because as you probably, well, you'll obviously realise that they've had a really hard time over the last few years, and everything from the cost of rates for their buildings, the energy prices, the raw materials prices. It's been a fairly torrid time, and not to mention the emergence of things like the no-show culture. That's really hit restaurants hard, and despite all of that, they get up and dust themselves down and go back to their restaurants and try and give us guys, and always do give us guys, a really fantastic experience. So I think the important things about the brand really is to make it really just make the branding very, very clear and be honest. Nick was talking earlier about the personas and knowing the niche or the segment of one's marketing niche that one should be in. And I think it's not kind of making those things too confusing. So really appealing very clearly to customers in the face of all of those challenges, and making it very obvious what the brand is all about, and all about honesty as well. There's no point having a brand, for example, that isn't believable. Nick mentioned at the top of the hour about how people confuse brands with logos with, hey, let's rebrand, and I always say, well, it has to be believable. There's no point creating an idea for a new brand and brand values that have no place in the business, at all. So in terms of challenges, there's lots of them. Challenges specific to brands, I think it's just about being relevant, about being clear, about what's on offer, being honest and true about the business and the truths of the business. That's where I'd go with it. Stick to the basics, in effect.
Very good. Okay. So Nick, same to you then. What do you see as these brand and other key challenges for restaurateurs going forward?
To me, I think the biggest challenge, and I don't think it's always stemmed now, there's lots of focus on cost of living and less disposable income. But it's about an experience that you remember, and it's an experience that you want to come back for. And I think it doesn't really matter what sector that you're in. But for a restaurant, we're focused on that returning guest and those positive reviews, because it makes the sell much easier. So it's about developing that loyalty and communicating it well. It's about having an affordable product that sits well within the marketplace, but your highlights are on your value. So for us, quality is a big focus of what we do. We have affordable prices of our produce, but the quality plays an important part for that. So we've recently launched a series, we've called it Friends of Fat Hippo, that's talking about our suppliers. So we've got our own potato fields in Wooler. We've gone through the whole process of the farmers that look after our potato fields and the crop that comes out of it. So we're making sure that the quality of the fries and the hand cuts are exacting to our standards. We've gone around our bakery and the buns that we work with, and the team that developed that. We've gone through the brewery. We've gone through our sauce manufacturer, that initially our sauces was an in-house produce that was made, in batches that was required, but now the volume of sites that we have and the amount that we need to produce, we've had to entrust a company with our secret recipes to produce a volume for us. But it's understanding all those steps and even down to the meat as well. Where does that come from? Because realistically, what does a customer want? They want to make sure that when they're spending their money, they're spending it on quality, that if they're out to enjoy themselves and have a good experience. So like for me, every touching point along the way should be focused on that, especially now that, you know, you don't want someone to go for a half-assed meal because they just need to fill their belly. You want them to have an experience, so they'll come back for more and they'll tell their friends about it. So the acquisition model for us in marketing becomes easier. We're just communicating those stories throughout. And I'd say that's the biggest challenge, you know, as we're, you know, the biggest challenge we have in marketing is how we communicate that now effectively in a time where people don't have the attention spans that they once did, and there's so much information online now that you're surrounded by content. So it's making someone want to stop in their tracks to look and find out more about your business. That's the biggest challenge in marketing of what that content is, because you could create the most beautiful video you've ever done. It's 3 minutes long. That explains your brand perfectly. But if no one's going past 7 seconds, you haven't hit the nerve that you need to hit. So it's about that constant drumbeat that dictates that and shows that you're acquiring the customer's interest, which then gets them into your cycle of your acquisition model. What other content may they see that helps them make that decision of, I want to book here? And I think that helps them with the people not, you know, we all hear about people booking and then not turning up because they've booked multiple choices, and then on the day between their friends, they're like what they have. If you created that buzz and excitement in advance, you're on top of that list. You know, they've booked you and they are going to turn up, they are going to come, and they know what to expect because we're being honest with our imagery. We're using lots of user generate based content rather than huge glossy photo shoots, so it becomes real of what people were there, and the brand's seen as friendly and open to communication. You know, we're not a business that pumps out content and then doesn't return. If there's a question that's asked, we respond really fast. You know, for a team that's only 3 of us, you know, we basically call it reactivity ourselves, quite a common term in the marketing world, but we're all on it. So even that's out of our normal working hours, or it's a weekend because the head office aren't working at the weekend, the marketing team are always on, able to answer those questions. And we have really good communication channels, you know, touching on the previous point of how we make sure that brand is shared across the business. We can ask those questions to relevant staff members if we need to in each of the locations, or, you know, they can get more information from us as well. So communication, I think, is, you know, a challenge that can quite quickly be rectified. But the challenge is making it relevant and understanding really how people consume content now compared to what they did. I think even if you go back, you know, 12 months, attention spans were probably 2 times, 3 times more, and they would stop and they would give time to content. But now it's so fast paced. You've got to get that information out really quick for them to be able to understand it. And, you know, hopefully off the back of that, the lower disposable income that people have, when they are then out, they're enjoying themselves in that environment. They're sharing that with their friends because they've had such a good time that you've acquired 3, 4, 5 additional customers from that one person having the experience that not only they've seen online and wanted to have, they've lived it. I think, and then it's, you know, looking at your other data and other channels of how you keep communicating with those people. So they've been there, they might not have visited again in the last 30 days. Well, how do I keep the drumbeat without making it a big sell of, oh, we've got this deal on, come back, we've got this deal on, we've got this deal on, because that's just a fight to the bottom. You know, margins are tight. You can't afford to just be giving huge discounts to your customers. What you want them to do is to be coming back because of the experience that they've had, not because you've got a deal with 50% off.
And just to add to that a little bit, Nick, what always strikes me is that this, in its simplest terms, is about, I mean, we talk about living the brand and stuff, but it's all about believability, practicing what we preach, in effect, isn't it? We talked earlier about how at the very beginning of the customer journey, the first touch point may well be picking up a phone or the online booking process or whatever. And what was promised and alluded to there needs to be played out all the way through that journey, so that at the end of it, as you say, those diners become really strong advocates. They tell their friends, they use the social channels that you've talked about, and all the methods that are prevalent now for spreading the word. But the bottom line is that I think any business, particularly hospitality, and certainly us as software people, we have to deliver what we say we're going to deliver. And so if at the beginning of our journey we talk about, I don't know, fresh and local, let's say, hospitality phrases, then it has to be fresh and local. And at the end of the experience, the customers need to be really celebrating that and kind of agreeing that they got exactly what they expected and more. And that's what I meant earlier about how it has to be believable. There have to be truths in what we say underpin our brand, because otherwise, if the truths aren't there and not borne out by customer experiences and what they say on things like the review sites, then really our brand means nothing.
Yeah, it resonates with me. There was a guy I worked with 15 years ago that always used to refer to it as a rabbit in the headlights. So if you're a rabbit in the headlights and you don't have the answer of what direction you're going in, then you're going to get run over. So it's about being prepared. What if you're making that sell, we're fresh and local, then prove it, but prove it in advance so the customer's not asking the questions. Is this fresh and local? They should have that trust and that knowledge in advance to understand what your brand values are. If you are building those as a business, then it's making sure that you've built a plan of how you're going to communicate that as well. And that could be down to the colors that you use in your logo, to the content plan that you've built around your launch or around a product launch. It's understanding that those values fit within all of those metrics, not just a logo that says we're fresh and local.
Interesting, because it's very similar in the software world, and we know now that software buying habits have changed over the last couple of years or so. And by the time software buyers get to our website or any kind of entry touch point, they've done their research. They know what they want. They know what they're expecting, and they want validation that we can deliver it. And by and large, they'll know by the time that they talk to us that we can deliver it. And the reason for that is that they will have read reviews, they'll have spoken to other users. That there's so much, we talked about data, but there's so much data out there in the online world that most decisions are often made prior to them getting into the traditional sort of sales stream. It's the same in restaurants, as you say. What we want is diners or wannabe diners to be learning from their peers and colleagues about how wonderful an experience they're going to get. And really, at that point, all they need to do is just book it and enjoy it, rather than do a whole load of further stuff.
Yeah, I think a big thing for me, I won't name the group that I was consulting for at the time, but when I first went into them, they work with multiple agencies. So a PR agency, a company that did their website, someone else that did their SEO, another company that did their Google paid spend, someone else that did their social paid spend, and then internally they were doing their organic. But not at any point had all of those people come together and sat in a room. And you're trying to communicate that brand through all of those multiple channels, but everyone's pulling in different directions because they don't understand the sell that you're all doing. And getting everyone in that room and having a focus of, right, this is our brand, this is what we're selling, these are our principles, this is how we're going to sound and how we do. Lo and behold, the results of that business went up. We're in a lucky situation that we manage it all ourselves internally and don't work with those agencies. So it's easier for us to communicate as a team of what we're working on in each campaign. And there's nothing wrong with working with multiple agencies, but it's about having that clear understanding of what it is that you're trying to communicate, whether that's internally or externally. And then also, how does that fit in with the customer journey? So, you're trying to sell some software. As you've said a few minutes ago, customers have done all of their research. They know they're probably just coming to you to get a price, and they'll probably come to 2 or 3 businesses, which they've all looked into, could go, any of these could work. And they're now looking for the price and the main sales or your next things that you might be developing that you haven't put out there yet. For us, it's very similar. They understand what they're going to get. They've researched that. They've looked at our Google reviews and our TripAdvisor reviews. They're visiting that city maybe, or they're a local to that city. So word of mouth becomes a part of that. And then the social media element of it gives them the excitement of anything that's new or anything else that's out there. The purchase has already been made. It's in their mind. They are going to visit at some point. It's then just about getting them through that funnel from where all their interest is to getting them into a paid customer, and then using other forms of marketing to communicate that once they've left, so they're still being a friend. It's like someone coming to your house. You don't work on a friendship for them to come once and never see him again. That's about forever communicating it. And even if their experience wasn't that great, how do you communicate to make sure and give them some reassurance that they can visit again? It's all about communication for me. And that, I think, is where people are trying to develop brands or create a new brand or looking to rebrand. That's often forgotten, because the simple win is, I need a logo because I need to put it on a bit of letterhead, or I need a website and it needs to look like this, rather than thinking in depth of, well, how do we talk? What are we? How do we sound? What's our actual persona as a brand? And I think that's where a lot of businesses can get it right and really right. Like for me, Innocent Smoothies is one business that I always look at. It's not in the same sector as us, but they communicate their brand so well, even down to clear messages on the bottles. And then you've got other brands that exist that just haven't narrowed down what their sound is, what their persona is, and it is just a logo. It's nothing more than that. And I think that makes it such a harder sell, makes it hard for a marketing team to develop that as well further.
I think it comes down to believability. There's no point at all, a restaurant saying, I know, let's relaunch ourselves as X. We're Y at the moment, but let's relaunch ourselves as Y. We're X at the moment. And then they kind of say, oh, well, should we, relaunch ourselves as a beautiful thatched cottage type thing with horse brasses everywhere and, looks like something out of Emmerdale. When in actual fact, their building just doesn't lend itself to that, and it will never be that. And then putting all that into a logo that tries to hoodwink people into thinking, oh, we're going to have that type of experience. I think customers are not that gullible, and they get very, very cross if what they experience isn't what they were led to believe they would experience. Yeah. And I think it's true of all businesses, but restaurants particularly need to be very honest about their offer and concentrate on what they're really, really good at and the truths of their business.
But is something that we're encountering, I think, as you say, John, every day in almost every aspect of our lives as consumers with other businesses. For me, it always stems from the "your call is important to us" message while I'm sitting there in a queue with 50 people ahead of me. If the call was important, they'd better staff the call center, wouldn't they?
Well, the example I often use, sorry, Nick, I know I shut up in a sec, but the answer I always use, or the example that I often give, is that there was a certain national bank a few years ago that still exists, and they had a catchphrase that was something along the lines of, I don't know, really helpful or helpful banking or something. And all of their adverts are all about local and, helping old ladies cross the road and all this kind of stuff. And I have a local branch of that particular bank where I live in the UK. And I remember going there one day and it had closed and they'd made all the staff redundant. And of course, I came away thinking, well, in what way, in anybody's mind, is any of that helpful? And it just blew apart in my mind everything that these guys had claimed. And I got quite cross about it. And as you can see, I still am.
No, I think it's the same. Like, I've, from the agency days, I had I say, luck really to work across multiple sectors. So I worked with a startup for a call center, £1 billion startup, worked in the automotive industry, worked in the recruitment industry, and then the restaurant industry. And for me, the restaurant and hospitality sector was much more rewarding because the data that's available of guests was more at hand. Whereas for others, it's about finding ways of creating that data to understand your customer better. But we're all trying to do something that's the same, which is to create loyalty to our business. Whether that's selling a piece of tech, whether that's selling a burger, you're trying to generate that loyalty, that advocacy where people want to talk about you, because that's the best way, that's the best form of selling. But it's about understanding that whole journey of what you're trying to do. And it always frustrated me, when I had the agency, of someone approaching saying, I'd like a new brand. And the first thing they would say is, I've been thinking about these colors and maybe this logo should have a little house in it because we're homely. And you're like, hang on, let's forget all of that, throw it in the bin, and let's start again. And simple questions. If you're a superhero, what are you going to save? What are you going to do? How do you look? Like, create a vision of what that brand is, to understand really what the main goals are. And it would drive me insane. You see people that would have certain values, but the business either didn't lead by them or didn't demonstrate them to the customer. So they might have those values internally, but externally, the customer would have never known.
There's also, sorry, Nick, I was going to pick up on that, but also something you mentioned earlier about staff and internal and stuff. And I think that there's a lot to be said. And again, it sounds a bit cheesy, but recognizing staff as being internal customers, and on that basis, kind of treating them as just customers, and therefore everybody has the same set of brand values to work to. And I worked for another software company prior to joining Favouritetable, and occasionally, some well-meaning member of staff would come to me and say, well, I'm a bit concerned about how the company's doing. Here's the new brand that we should have. And they would do the same thing, and they would shove a logo under their nose that they'd scribbled together during their lunch hour. And they'd say, that's what we should have. That's the new brand for the company.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it was, honestly. And it's like, well, you don't need me then. And I'll just saying the same thing, really. I think it just comes down to clarity, doesn't it? Being really clear about what
I think it
comes
back to a lot of the points that we've been discussing today, where I think, Nick, you mentioned earlier about it's like your business is a person, like your customers are people. You're having a conversation. It's how you greet people, how you invite them into their home, how you answer the telephone, what your reputation is. In the workplace, that kind of thing. These are all things that make us feel. And I guess as part of this process, we're trying, in marketing terms, we're always trying to better understand what it is that our audience needs. We're trying to meet those needs, recognize those needs and meet them, right?
I see it as, it's emotional, isn't it? We all buy something with emotion. We all are influenced by our emotion. So if we're excited about that brand, whether they're selling software and they're going to fix and find a solution for us, or whether that's going to fill your belly with food, there's an emotional purchase that happens, and that emotional purchase is done so by communication, because that's what we need. And actually, people lack communication. I think COVID has a big play on that. We were locked up for pretty much a year in your house with your other half, and you might not have even liked your other half for that year. For me, I had 2 kids at home as well. One of them was 3 at the time. And you're both trying to work. It's incredibly hard, but your communication with the outside world was less. because it just wasn't there. And I think now we thrive it even more. And if you communicate with people well, the sell naturally comes. And we're not trying to be, you don't need to do that hard sale. You don't need to discount your product to a fight to the bottom. What you need to do is communicate what it is of the reason why someone should purchase something from you. And the easiest way to do that is to understand who is the person, give your customers persona groups. So, we might be targeting the audience. I mentioned about like a mum with the kids, because we've got school holidays coming up. They're in some cities now. Next week is school holidays as well. So you might have a persona that we're aiming certain content at that's for them. And then you've got your student persona, you've got your older couple persona, you've got couples, you've got individuals, you've got groups. Rather than see them as I've got an 18 to 24-year-old that I'm targeting, actually give them a name, think about their interests, think about the things that would make them stop in their way, because that makes it easier to start communication. And then a brand start to be a thing that people can communicate with, because it becomes more real. You're not just a brand and someone works for that brand. We're now living the brand, and the staff will naturally start to communicate that. And then it's just, good communication channels internally for me is a huge key. And the senior leaders and the area managers and the general managers are all living that brand because they understand it, and that filters down throughout all of your staff really well. And I think, sorry, John, like for me, if I was to start a new brand, if someone was to come to me saying, I've got this behind me, we found a location, we're going to have a new restaurant and we're going to sell food, they might have an idea of what they're going to sell based on the skill set of the team behind it, but they need to quite quickly identify who the target audience is, and then how they are as a brand, what's their persona, even before thinking about what it's called.
I totally agree. And I was just going to throw in there as well, because it's something else that I'm sort of, pretty passionate about, is this concept of value. And you mentioned price earlier, and it is prevalent in the software industry. The software these days has changed, and maybe it'll get me into trouble for saying this, but for a lot of B2B buyers, software is a commodity purchase nowadays. 20 years ago, software was very, very, very novel, and so we have to work very hard and we love doing that, by the way, but to create the added value, whether that comes from service or product functionality or whatever else. And that leads me on to say that I think for restaurants, or again any business, I think it's acceptable when deciding which niche you're in, and therefore what your brand values look like and that kind of thing. It's fine to know where you're not. And I remember being at a trade show in the UK's, I don't know where it was, Olympia or somewhere, and some guy came up to the stand and said, the first thing he said, he marched up and said, "How much are you?" Good morning, sir. Should we talk software? Well, how much are you? And of course, I had to kind of untangle and reverse engineer this conversation to get back to, well, what do you want? Let us explain how we give added value. And the guy just wanted a price point. He said, well, those guys next door, they're, I don't know, £70 a month. If you can do 70, I'll buy you. And at that point, on behalf of the company and myself, I kind of, in a very, very nice way, left the door open for him, but said, this isn't what we're about. You need to go and talk to the guys next door. That's not what our brand's about. We're all about added value. And I think restaurants have every, not right, but I think it's a good kind of tactic to use when planning what your brand looks like, in my view.
Yeah, it's that clear proposition piece, isn't it? It's the, if you're going to book something or you're going to look at, you need to have an understanding of what it may cost, because you don't want to waste people's time. Again, people were precious about, I don't want to be sitting on a call for an hour with someone selling to me and then it's all singing and dancing, but I haven't got the budget for it. So you need an understanding of where it fits within the price brackets to make the conversation easier to start. But then it's the, oh, and these are the benefits of us that you get with this package, but we can also do said, and it makes it easier to create that upsell. And again, it's like ordering food, isn't it? You've looked, when you look at the menu at a restaurant, you've probably looked at 1 or 2 dishes and the overall cost of it to go, I'm happy to go there and spend 40 quid on a main. That's not us, but others. You might be spending 40 quid on a main. If you're happy that, that's not what you're going to spend, because when you're there, you're going to be buying some drinks. You might have a starter as well. You might have a coffee to end. Your cost per spend per head is going to be more there, but you're happy and comfortable to spend that or be within that price bracket. And I think that's the same with any service that you're looking to have, especially service-led businesses. Like what price bracket do you sit in to, in a sense, stop the riffraff from emailing you and your sales team wasting loads of time on a sale that they've only got a budget of 20 quid a month. So, and then, it's how you communicate once you've got them in those funnels, they've shown an inquiry, how you communicate actually, you need to go back to your boss and get a bigger budget because these guys are going to solve this problem and this problem. It's been able to start that communication, as your persona. We're here to sell. We're here to support. That to me is key, and it's vital, I think, across every sector that certainly that I've been involved in over the years.
So I just want to say a really big thank you to Nick Fountain, Head of Marketing and Communications at Fat Hippo Group, and John Jones, Commercial Director at Favouritetable, for joining us today. Thank you ever so much, fellas. Really, really good conversation, and catch you on the next one.